everybody. Thank you for joining tonight. My name is Ron Robertson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Picmonic. So before we jump in, Chris, where did you go to medical school? Where are you right now in residency? Just catch people up to speed real quick on some of those details.
Yeah, sure. So from New York originally, I did medical school at Albert Einstein in the Bronx, New York. And now I'm up at Yale New Haven Hospital in Connecticut for pediatric residency. So I'm a third-year resident, about to finish. And I'll be going on to a clinical informatics fellowship 2 years down at Sinai in Manhattan.
Which is phenomenal. So congrats to your success thus far. So I'm going to go ahead and ask some of the questions that look like they're popping up over here.
Cool.
Because this is an interesting question in general. You know, a lot of people ask about memorization versus conceptual understanding. So that was one of the questions. How do you balance understanding truly the concepts that you need to know to become a healthcare professional versus just memorizing the details? And how do you kind of tease those out?
Yeah. So unfortunately, our field is a lot about memorization, just route memorization. So different physical exam signs that are named after old physicians, that's just route memorization. And people will ask you that, and you're just going to be expected to know it. So the reality is that there's going to be route memorization, and you're just going to have to deal with it. So I accept that, and that's what I use. I think Picmonic is really great for those cases, as you were talking about, like all these enzymes and all these different biochemical pathways where there's really not much to it except it's just memorization. So sometimes you just have to accept the fact. But I do think it's really, whenever you can, try to figure out the foundation of something. So for names of enzymes, try to figure out what part of the pathway they're in to make them named that. So whenever I can, I do try to figure out why something is named that, or why, whatever I'm learning, I try to figure out why when I can. But I do also accept the fact that there is, unfortunately, a lot of route memorization.
It's an interesting balance. I think there's a lot of stuff that we had to learn that is just that. It's rote memorization, and you might not need to know the actual meaning or understanding behind it. But then there's also parts of rote memorization that can help you build a conceptual understanding. Where it's like if you can't remember some of the core details, how are you going to build an understanding off of it? And that's where, for me, Picmonic was a massive. It was almost like creating a framework that then I could fill in the details and some of the information.
So I think exactly like you were saying, Picmonic is really good for establishing that framework. So a lot of the stuff on step one, students get really scared because they haven't even heard of that disease, and it wasn't taught in medical school at all. So do expect that, and you're going to have to learn these diseases from scratch with no framework. So like you were saying, Picmonic is actually super useful for figuring out those terms, committing it to memory, and then once you finally have this initial framework, you can actually start to more easily delve into the disease and figure out, okay, this connects to this, because once you have that initial framework, it makes the subsequent learning a lot faster. So Picmonic is definitely great just for diving into topics you know nothing about, and then it will facilitate more natural learning just as you go. So, and then the other way around, it's really useful for diseases that you already know, because it will just increase the efficiency that you can recall that, and you'll be able to connect it to different topics a lot faster. So I did it both ways, honestly.
So coming back to another question, when you go through UWorlds and you do the questions, how would you and let's talk about more on the first pass, but would you actually, going through the rationale and the explanations, did you take notes? Or was it literally just, active reading and really trying to make sure you had a good comprehension of the material?
Yeah, so this was also, I think, probably one of the keys to my success was that I did keep a very extensive note library, and so I created a huge study guide for my sort of a rolling study guide, which basically in January I started a skeleton, and it was just a Word document with like neurology, gastroenterology, cardiology, just different headlines. And then, like you were saying, whenever I would go through a UWorld explanation, I would just type just a couple quick words on what I learned and the pearls from that. So I did that throughout the whole year, and by a dedicated study period, I had this huge sort of simplified study guide of just like the most high yield things or the things that I was least familiar with. And I kept that going through the whole study period and actually into step 2 and step 3 because it's all still relevant. So I would just keep adding on. So I highly recommend students actually keep a rolling study guide like that going throughout the year, because repetition is basically, I mean, it's got to be one of the best forms of, solidifying memory, if not the best. So having a study guide where you can go back and see again that thing you saw once, but you're probably going to forget, super important. So I definitely recommend keeping some kind of study guide.
What you said, that repetition is critical to remembering, right? Like the whole theory of spaced repetition and what exists in a lot of the systems nowadays is that as soon as you learn something, you start to forget it. And if you don't try and if you don't review that information or try and relearn it at some point in time, you're gonna forget it. So repetition is necessary. The question is, how do you space that out intentionally and intelligently? And the beauty is now there's a lot of systems that will help do that for you. So Picmonic has spaced repetition, Osmosis, Firecracker, Anki's another example, right, where you can plug in flashcards and then actually have intelligent algorithms that will help you review the information at the right point in time, which is when you're about to forget it, but most of us don't know that intuitively. So I'm a big fan of spaced repetition.
Yeah.
And a lot of these systems just didn't exist when I was in med school. Any last thoughts on step 1 studying prep and how you absolutely nailed that test?
So basically, as much as you can, try to get these, but don't drive yourself crazy, and always have some me time and have some break time to keep yourself sane. So studying in January, prioritizing UWorld and trying to get through it twice before exam time, getting another question bank in and doing as much of that as you can. After you feel comfortable with UWorld, more questions is better. First aid, as much as you can, getting through that, and having some kind of audio or visual resource to listen to during your downtime, and then keeping a study guide as you go to have constant refreshing of all the stuff that you're definitely going to forget.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I'm going to say that the best way to memorize first aid is by using Picmonic, because we cover the majority of it. So
yeah, exactly.
No, so that's phenomenal advice, and obviously some literature and research and data to back not only what you're saying, but your score alone says a lot. So let's talk about research in medical school, because we're talking about research for a second. What's your kind of thoughts on doing it, whether you need to be published, how important it is to get a legit residency? Just 1 minute on research.
Yeah, so medical school is super hard, obviously, because we're balancing so many different things at once. And if school wasn't hard enough, they also want you to start fleshing out your resume for residency. And
right.
a lot of people say to take first year slow, and you should. But the unfortunate reality is that as soon as you can get on your resume, day 1 of medical school, that will always benefit you. So your whole career in medical school, you should always be looking for opportunities to flesh out your resume or to get in some kind of research position. Don't kill yourself during first year, obviously, there's no pressure, but if you find an opportunity, go for it. And obviously prioritizing schoolwork is most important. So research-wise, you don't necessarily need to publish, and I publish. But so a lot of people do not publish, and you do totally fine. Some people publish and they don't get, they don't match where they want. As long as you're in some kind of project, some kind of research project, that's what people want to see, even more and more nowadays. So I would definitely have a goal to get involved in some type of research project, whether that's basic science, a clinical research, some kind of quality improvement research with your hospital, but getting involved in at least one research program, research project, I would have as one of your goals. And not necessarily publication. Publication is great, but at least being involved in at least one project for sure.
I think that's good advice. The only thing I would add on to it is, because I did research throughout, but try and get involved in research that you actually care about,
Yeah,
so that it's not just padding your resume. Because at the same time, if you get in there and you start getting drilled on questions and you really weren't that passionate about what you were even involved in, it shows. So make
yeah,
sure it's something
absolutely.
that you care about. Let's talk about extracurriculars, or uh, for you, outside of research, were there other things that you did throughout your journey that you felt helped kind of put you ahead to get into the residency of your dreams?
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend, even outside of the research, also having some activities that you're involved in, preferably in a leadership position, is what your goal is, but being involved is great from the get-go. So, our school had a student-run clinic for uninsured patients that we were able to be, sort of the primary care providers. So I was heavily involved in that. Um, being worked with the Step 1 group, I was doing tutoring, I was, involved in activities in the community and things with the local hospitals. So
Yeah.
as much as you can, looking for activities outside of your schoolwork. So volunteer things that are going on, clubs in your school that have a leadership position open. You should be aiming for, within reason. Don't stretch yourself out too much. But these are the things that people more and more are
Good
going to
advice.
probably be wanting to see. Um, so yeah.
That's solid. How about and I keep trying to go kind of towards the residency, right? Because nailing step one is critical. We know that. It's probably one of the paramount driver, right? But outside of step one, research, extracurriculars, letters of rec. Talk about letters of recommendation, and is that important? Is it a necessary piece of the process? What can you do to either make sure you get good letters, or set yourself up for success there?
Yeah. So yeah, I should probably just pull back real quick. A lot of what we're talking about, basically, just imagine one day you're going to open up that that ERAS web page when you're applying to residency, and there's basically just categories that you have to fill out, and the categories are like, there's a category for research activities, for volunteer activities. Then you upload your letters of rec. So one day you guys are going to be filling out all these different forms on the ERAS page, and this is what we're talking about here. So letters of rec, you're going to need them on this when you apply, and it's good to sort of make a connection with someone whenever you can, whenever you see the opportunity, whenever you're interested in the work someone's doing, or if you clicked with someone or have a project with someone, jump on those
Yeah.
opportunities and then make those relationships as strong as you can, because you're going to need that letter one day, and you're going to need to just network yourself, because that's just part of the profession. Um, so I would say, as early in your career as you can, when you see the opportunity, go for it. Try to meet lots of different people so you're not really pigeonholing yourself, and then see who you connect with the most, or whose interests are most in line with yours, and attach yourself more to those people. And then especially during second and third year, and as you start to get more hospital time,
Yep.
really start to keep your eye out for mentors who are in the field you want to go into, and start to develop relationships with those people. And that could be offering help on a project they're doing, or just asking them if they have any learning opportunities that you could be involved in, just to make that relationship stronger.
That's great. That's great. Um, how about clinicals and third year? I mean, third year and fourth year, as you're kind of talking about, the further you get along in your career. Um, Towards the aspect, I've had different conversations with students who, a lot of people I feel like that I talk to end up regretting how they went into third year, specifically, because it's a big change from the first 2 years of medical school, right? Now you're in
Yeah.
clerkships, and you're on the wards, and um, just in I don't want to bias this, so I just kind of want to open it up to you. Do you have any specific advice or thoughts, things that maybe you know now that you didn't know then,
Let's see.
you wish you might have done
So
differently?
yeah, so I would recommend First of all, like I was just saying, the networking aspect. I was,
Right.
I definitely could have been better at networking and meeting more people, being more, willing to meet and interact with attendings. So I could have been more proactive about like finding different mentors and sort of casting a wider net. So I definitely could have been better with that, and I think it's important for you to remember as you're going through your rotations, just looking for people that you can connect with. Um, Definitely important to have some sort of notepad on you to take high yield notes on your rotations, because you'll get swept up in the day and the busyness of the day, and you'll feel
Hmm.
like you're not learning anything if you don't see it again, like repetition. So have some sort of notepad that you're always jotting stuff down on. And then being very open with the team and trying to be as helpful and useful as possible, because that's what's going
Great
to,
advice. Great
yeah, that's what's
advice.
going to get you better relationships with people on the team, and then you're going to get better evaluations. And unfortunately, you need those evaluations for residency. So meeting everyone on the team, offering help whenever you can, offering to give a small presentation on something, trying to take on extra patients, like always trying to do a little bit extra, but never trying to be overbearing, because people definitely don't like when you're like being too intense or like, too annoying, but within reason, trying to be
Find the balance.
as helpful. Yeah, find a balance between being helpful and outgoing, but not trying to be a gunner or anything too abrasive to anybody.
Great advice. It's great advice. So last kind of quick question as we wrap, we're going to wrap up in probably the next five or so minutes. Uh, Again, crew online today, feel free to write in any last questions you have, and we'll try and get them real quick. But how did you choose your career? Did you come in knowing that you were going to end up where you are? Did you change decisions based on clerkships or shadowing or life experience? And do you have any advice as far as that goes?
Yeah, so I still don't have the perfect idea of where I'm going, and
Yeah.
and everything's always, for everyone, your career is always going to be changing, and your interests are always going to be changing. And medicine's nice because, um, really, no matter what you do, you're always in a position to kind of tweak your career, which is nice.
Hmm.
So, I would say be open-minded on your third year rotations. Don't do anything that you don't like. So don't do anything for prestige. Really do it if you like what you're doing and you can wake up happy, because that's what's going to keep you going. Um, and then be open to new experiences like research and giving yourself a fair chance at enjoying that type of stuff as well. So yeah, for me, throughout residency, I was doing a lot of clinical work, and I realized that I wanted to do more of research and sort of quality improvement on a systems level, which is why I'm moving a little bit into the informatics world. So always being flexible and keeping an eye out for different things you might like, and trying different things, meeting different people. So don't ever be afraid if don't ever try to push yourself in one direction if you feel like it's not working. People change their minds all the time in our field, so don't feel bad if you're not liking where you're at right now.
I love it. Well, Chris, you're an absolute wizard, man. I'm astonished at what you've been able to do and accomplish. Step one, I know it's just a score on a test, but obviously for those that have been there in the past, we know what that's like. And for those of you that are coming up to the exam, it's doable. It's something that we all get through. And there's a lot that you can do to prepare and set yourself up for success. So Chris has shared what I believe are some absolute golden nuggets here today. Would love to give you an opportunity to come back and join us again for a different webinar. I know there's probably many more things that you can share. So for
Sure.
today, I'd love to wrap up. There, a couple of last questions that were coming in. So I want to just shout this out so that people do know. You can go to picmonic.com, find the webinars page, uh, click the little RSVP button, type in your email. This webinar is recorded. As much as I hate being on video and recorded, this is recorded. Chris has some great tips that if you missed, we are going to disperse this. So go to the webinars page at picmonic.com, RSVP to this. So Chris, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy day. I know you're an incredibly busy gentleman and doctor at this point in time. So thank you for taking the time, sharing your tidbits with the world. And for everyone else, if there's any questions that you have, feel free to write into feedback@picmonic.com. Please go to picmonic.com, sign up for a free account, as Chris mentioned. You can track it out, see if it's right for you, and hopefully will help you on your upcoming journey to becoming an incredible healthcare professional.